I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to tie-dye some sock blanks using acid dyes. We're going to use acid dyes, but we're going to do just some traditional tie-dye techniques that I might do on t-shirts, but instead we're going to use a sock blank. I feel like it's been a while since I've done something on a sock blank, but sock blanks are pre-knit pieces of fabric that are intended for you to dye and then unravel after. So whatever kind of technique you're doing, you'll get some really cool effects on the fabric. Now, the blanks that I'm using today are double-stranded sock blanks from Knit Picks. These are 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon, and they're knit with 2 strands of yarn held together. So that way, whatever random design we get, it'll unravel into 2 matched balls of yarn that could be used for either identical socks or some kind of symmetrical project. And it's a lot of fun. Before we jump in further, I would like to give a huge shout out and thank you to my lab partner today, Lindsay Liu. Lindsay, thank you so much for being my lab partner for today's episode of Dyepot Weekly. I started messing around with different ways to twist this up because it is longer than it is wide, and so I was unsure if I tried to do one spiral starting in the center, how that would feel across the whole thing, but ultimately I think that might be what would work best here, but I think it would be fun to try a lot of other kinds of techniques in the future. The blank is dry, and my attempts to do like the mini spiral did not work that well, so I'm gonna pinch, and we are gonna go for like a bigger, more traditional spiral, understanding that the edges may do some interesting things. And so hopefully we can now start to get these rubber bands on. These first ones I'm putting on really, really loosely. You can see that they actually are scrunching things up nicely. And I can put this edge in through there. I did technically tie-dye a sock blank like this once. I did it in, I think it was a sock blank special. Goodness, I forget what year. I did a lot of live streams, and so I believe that was the last time I tried this, and then I haven't done it in a pre-filmed episode of Dyepot Weekly. So I am excited to see what we end up with, and I mean, this looks pretty good. Pretty good. We could try to dye this dry, but even though Stroll does soak up water pretty quickly, I think we'll try to pre-soak it first. And I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 and a bit tablespoons of white vinegar to this tap water. So that way we can soak this blank at least a bit. My plan is to soak it for a bit so it gets damp. Then I'm gonna spin a lot of the water out of it with my spin dryer. And yeah, then that way it'll soak up liquid pretty easily. I'm also going to go ahead and pre-soak just a skein of Knit Picks Stroll fingering weight yarn that we'll use to help with any mess we're creating here today. But I'm very excited to see what we get and to try, you know, a traditional kind of pie shape here. I am going to push air out of it because, again, I would like the whole thing to get damp. But now I'm going to let everything soak for 30 minutes or so. It may not need that much time, but we'll go ahead and try. And again, since we're tie-dyeing, if we end up with white space in the resist in here, that'll be okay. That won't be an issue. For our tie-dye extravaganza, we're gonna mix some primary colors today. And I'm in an extra goofy mood today, so I apologize for the cringe-worthiness of some of my exuberance here. But we'll be using 3 different colors of Dharma acid dyes in deep magenta, Caribbean blue, and brilliant yellow. These colors are primaries, and I actually have recipes and ratios to make what I would consider a perfect rainbow to get the perfect secondaries from these 3 colors, but I'm not going to measure today. Today, we are going to go with what I know to create colors, to create our orange, green, and purple, just by randomly mixing them together a little bit. But what I do know from the triad color mixing and from my past experience, that for our green, we're going to need a little bit more yellow than blue. Maybe that was closer to 50-50. but in general, we'll need a little more yellow. For orange, we'll need more yellow than pink. Things tend to work out that way. I think the purple was more even, but again, I'm not even referencing the picture. I'm just gonna go for it and see what we get. Maybe I'll regret it. Maybe I'll regret it, and later I'll be like, Rebecca, you have the resource. Why didn't you look at it? You made that video so it could be a resource. But something about tie-dye, the whole thing is so organic and free-flowing anyway that that's the mood I'm in. We're gonna go for it. It does feel slightly wrong to use tulip tie-dye bottles for a video that is tie-dye but not tulip. I'm using acid dyes for this, but I do like reusing things that I have, and these are decent. They don't end up having the best seal between the bottle and the cap, but things do come out of the hole. The holes are big enough so they work great for the type of application we want to do. I'm going to go ahead and add about 50, I know I said I wasn't going to measure, but we're going to add about 50 milliliters of water to each of these bottles. My goal here is to have approximately the same amount of dye in each one. And the way I'm going to be doing that is by checking the levels of the colors when it's time to end. But let's see, like these squeeze bottles aren't quite as good, but I don't need the colors to be like super concentrated, but I should probably add a good bit of yellow here. Okay, I made a visible difference in the volume that we added. And it's gonna be okay if the colors aren't gonna be perfectly in the middle of what we have, and we'll be able to edit these colors as we go on. I'll be able to be like, ooh, this isn't pigmented enough when we first try it on, let's add some more. So nothing is final, but I do wanna mix up the dyes. I originally mixed all of these at a 1% strength, which meant that we got a clog in this one, which meant that we had 1 gram of dye dissolved in 100 milliliters of liquid. But see, even with that little bit of pink, we are already feeling redder. I'm gonna add some more yellow there. So when you have magenta and you add yellow to it, you do pass through a red before you get all of the way into orange. And actually, when I did my perfect rainbow, I even made a custom red mixture. Today, I think we'll use the pink instead of trying to make that red and adding some yellow to this. I mean, things may overlap, and that's maybe where we end up. But I think in that other video, I also made, using the like Caribbean blue, I made a more like royal Crayola blue color there as well. And so I think that did adjust some of the ratios we ended up using. I know I said I was gonna test later, but there's no harm in testing now. We can add more pink here. I don't think that'll hurt. Seems like it's all sticking to the top too. We will need more of the pink when we go and do our purple, but I didn't even start setting up for our green yet. So we'll need a lot of yellow again. I will say that it may have been easier to go with the recipes, but there is also something incredibly freeing about making it up, even if we don't end up with like a perfect color balance or color ratio. I really should shake this. And these stocks are a little bit older, so those ratios that I have from a while ago may not be as good. They may be a little bit off if one of these had a color that crashed out or did something funky there. So let's see. Oh, that looks like a good green already. Yeah, that's really good. So these colors aren't gonna be the most saturated they could be because we are, again, diluting them with water, which will both help spread them out and help the total color be a little bit less intense. That's not a problem. I mean, I'm going for, again, approximately similar amounts of dye, but I'm not gonna worry about it too much. Okay, and when there's a clog, you want to try to deal with that instead of just squeezing and letting the bottle kind of explode. I do protect my work surface with this shower curtain, and I do that so that way we don't end up making a mess all over my kitchen. I feel like I could be using my yarn mop now to wipe up all these bits and bobs, but that's okay. All right, some blue, and we need some more pink, and I think we're just about ready to go. Let's see. Probably will need a fair amount of pink. I added a lot of blue. Come on, turn purple. I'm like, it's looking bluer, but I don't quite see purple yet. All right, let's not make a mess. Okay, we're looking more purple now. I'm just gonna try to put the other little cap on. Oh yeah, we're purple. Purple, oh, purple. That's great. All right, we've got our rainbow. Let's tie-dye. I mean, all told here, we probably only have about 25 milliliters, maybe a little less of each of these colors, which on 100 grams of yarn would be a lot of dye. But if I kind of only had that 25 milliliters of color, then it would be on like one little spot. It would be harder to spread and move through our product. But we do need to go remove the water from our yarn. This is my Nina Soft spin dryer, and I'm gonna put in our little tie-dye mass, and I'm gonna balance it with this other skein that we pre-soaked. Hopefully that'll be pretty well balanced. There, you can kind of see inside the barrel. I don't show this Nina Soft spin dryer from Laundry Alternative that often anymore. I do have a full review of it on my channel, but this particular model, I believe, is discontinued, and it was discontinued shortly after I got it. And so that's why I don't show it often. And now the wash basin, the basin I use to collect the water, is stained. There's not pink coming out of this yarn, but the water comes out the bottom, and I am only doing it for a couple of seconds here because well, we want it to stay damp, and things don't dry completely, but this should then accept liquid really easily. But I don't usually bother to spin things out before we dye it, so we'll see how this goes. And especially since I didn't add any acid to the dyes either. All right, let's start with yellow. Oh no, we're beating up. We're beating up. That's okay. That's okay. We maybe spun out too much liquid, but we'll go slow, which also means we're likely only getting dye towards the outside area. But you can see when I add a little bit, well, now it's sinking in at first, and it's not going all the way through. Again, we did not pre-soak this first. What did we do? Well, okay, we pre-soaked it after we twisted it. So I'm bringing in the yarn mop to just pick up some of that dye that had gone down there, and I'm gonna come over and work on the reverse side a little bit here as well. But the dye is, at least initially, kind of hanging out on the surface before sinking in a little bit, which is fine. It also means that we're more likely to have some white left, which is nice. Oh, and we've got some pooling on the bottom here. So I'm gonna just wipe that up. That's why we have this mop around. Okay, maybe we'll just stick with the one side and then we'll do the other. Which way will we go? We'll do the orange, and we'll add some orange to there. Yeah, I'm getting a lot sort of on the bottom, but we've got Moppity over here to help us soak that up. We will go ahead and steam set everything. Oh, I guess I'm going this way. Okay. Pink next. I was like, I had to think about the order of the colors. But, you know, I could have just squeezed out the water, and maybe that would have been a little bit more successful for what we're trying to do. I also can push the bottle into the fabric more as I'm squeezing versus sort of painting on top, and by pushing it in, really letting that dye go. But we are again, having dye run out the bottom, which I don't think you can see very well, but I'm just gonna soak that up. And yeah, cool, cool. Okay, purple next. Yeah, because if I put it on, you can see we have like a little droplet there. But if I really push it into the fabric, then we've got the color really spreading more. And I'm trying to make sure I get in to the center as well. And I've used up a lot of the yellow, but we should have a reasonable amount of these colors, I hope. Oh man. The last time I tie-dyed, which I did do a fair amount of tie-dyeing this summer with Ryder, and you can see those videos here on the channel, but the kids were very constrained with the colors that they wanted, so I didn't do like a rainbow. When I made a shirt for myself, I was just trying to use up the colors that were the colors that the kids wanted. So I did a little bit less of what I would do if I was on my own. But this is so fun. I'm getting a little bit better at not doing too much, but we'll see. And maybe like some of this was narrow. We may have a big green section. We can make the yellow bigger because honestly, yellow is always the color that tends to disappear. It's because like, oh, you know where I'm leaking? I'm leaking out of the side of the bottle. So if I squeeze too hard, it's coming out of the threads. That's where part of this is coming. That's part of what I said about these bottles not being the best, just being okay. But yeah, if you add like a little bit of green to the yellow, it'll go to a lime green place pretty quickly. Whereas if you add blue, it takes a little bit more color for that to get overtaken. But I really like the colors at this strength. Okay, I guess yellow is the one color that I did do both sides a bit already, and it's okay if we have white left. I'm really curious to see how much white we are gonna end up with. But now I'm gonna pick it up, and there's not a lot of liquid here on the bottom, which is nice. But I'm gonna wipe that up before we flip it over so we can start dyeing the other side. And you can see how our yellow section here is smaller than a lot of the other colors that we have because of the way that they overlap. But you know how much I love a good rainbow. I mean, I dedicated a whole series to it this year. And yep, I'm being a little exuberant, but you know, tie-dye can be about exuberance. Now, what's some of the things that makes tie-dye so fun? And it's that because you have these resists, you never know exactly how it's gonna turn out. And now, okay, that's not entirely fair. You may be able to have a reasonable idea of what your yarn or shirt will look like, but there's always an element of surprise when you finally look at it and see how things turned out. And that makes the whole process very magical and fun. And so that's one of the things I really enjoy about tie-dyeing. I don't know if I told this story, but when I was in 4th grade, we did like a massive, and it was over like multiple weeks, but we did a massive fundraiser for the Humane Society, and we sold tie-dye t-shirts, and I just remember making more and more and more. I don't know why we did so many, but we spent a lot of time tie-dyeing in 4th grade, and so that was really, really nice. Now I will be able to peek, and I will peek because I'm curious how much. Okay, we do have a fair amount of white. Okay. It might vary per color, which again isn't a problem. I'm gonna flip it back over, trying really hard to not squeeze, because as I pick this up, I can tell you it feels wet now. It feels wet, it feels like we're getting a lot of dye in there, and I'm a little worried about the acid situation, but I do have an idea of something we could do. Maybe after we steam set for a little bit, we can just pour some vinegar on. I don't know how much that would spread through, but we'll see. We'll see. Do I need to add any more? Maybe we'll do just like a little bit. Oop, a little bit more purple. pink, orange. The yellow's pretty good. Green, I can see the green and the blue blending. That's giving some really nice features. And blue. Okay, I think we're pretty good. Okay, now I need to take this over to a steamer basket so we can start steam setting it. But actually, let's give it a little more acid. I just came over with a syringe with some vinegar in it, and I started just layering drops of it on top to just add a little bit more acid through. And I did about 10 milliliters of white vinegar total. The steamer basket is already steamy. I need my lid over here. And we are gonna go ahead and steam set this for 30 minutes. And in the meantime, let's go play with our yarn mop. I don't know about you, but this subtle little rainbow left behind is so beautiful to me. And so I'm just bringing this over and wiping it up. And I have to decide what we want to do, because I know whatever I do to this will change its character somewhat. I could pour the dye on, and the sections that we're going to get aren't going to be as maybe big as they would have been otherwise, but I mean, let's see what happens if I take like the purple and I put some on. See, it doesn't have the softness to it of when we added it in and then wiped it up. So I think, I haven't done this in a while. I called this like my dry rub technique, because there's just something about the organic nature of the way the colors play together when you have it down and you are wiping it up. Even if I'm planning a little bit about where the colors are placed, where they're going, to make sure that we have some like decent balance and not an absurd amount of blending of the colors. We may get, we get some orange layered with green, and that is just fine. That is just fine. But this gives it, I don't know, something more random than what we otherwise had. And I'm even going to move the zip tie around so I can try to just mix things up to add more color to what we were getting on this very random kind of skein anyway. I think I haven't done yellow yet. Of course, we're not using up all the dye, but Lindsay Lou is getting a yarn mop with her blank, and so I wanted to just lean into it. Blue. I think blue is a color that I haven't done yet. Or I mean, maybe we did do, we just didn't have a lot of it. I've done this on the counter and stuff in the past as well. And so this is just going to be like a quiet rainbow with like random-ish patches. And I'm looking to see now how balanced I think it is. And let me zoom out a little bit. It always happens with this camera that sometimes there's not recording, but I did take this, oh no! And I wiped up the edges of the bottles and some spills on the countertop as well. But what I'm doing now is just looking at the balance of the yarn. And this is something that I used to obsess over a lot more. And by balance, I mean, in our randomness, we have white areas, that is fine. But do we have any unnaturally long sections of white? There are some longer ones, but are they gonna feel completely out of place or whatnot? And so I think I can take, some color and just bring it in, and literally, I mean, wiping up actual spills as well. But we can bring in a little bit more color, and I'm doing this sloppily and messily to go in with the randomness of this color that we have created here. Because if I poured it directly on, it would be more regular, a little bit more repeating than what I am trying to do. I'm trying to have it feel very organic. And feel, well, that one maybe wasn't as great, but feel like a mess that I've wiped up that gives us this just fun, random rainbow that feels reminiscent to a lot of things I created back in my Kool-Aid days. Now, I am gonna hold on to this for a little bit. We still have dye here. We'll do something fun with all of those colors, but I'm gonna wait until we're done steaming our tie-dyed yarn to steam set this, just so that way we don't get color transfer. And so this is just gonna kind of sit here for the next, I guess, 23 minutes. Okay, it has been 30 minutes. Woo! Did not drop the lid on the floor. And I kind of want to do a little test. We're just going to do a little nice little tap. Okay, the cloth got wet, but it did not pick up any color, so that is a good sign. And the runoff is looking clear, or maybe a tiny bit blue, which would be standard given Caribbean blue. So I'm going to set this aside to cool. And in the meantime, let's check. Okay, I don't see a lot of runoff color down below. That is good. Sometimes there can be runoff if things are dripping too much. And our yarn mop, I am now going to add it to steam set for 30 minutes. Now, as for the rest of this dye, we have a tiny bit of green, blue, and yellow, a more moderate amount of the pink, orange, and purple. What am I going to do with the rest of this dye? Well, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I'm going to use all this dye up in another video. I'm going to do a leave no dye behind with all these colors. I have a fun idea. And so if you want to see that video, the best way to make sure you don't miss it is by subscribing. And subscribing is the best way you can help support the content here as well. Okay, it has been 30 minutes. I'm not gonna check in. I'm gonna assume that we are good, and I'm gonna set this aside to cool with our tie-dyed blank. There are many other ways that you can support the content here as well. You can become a lab partner like Lindsay Lou and get shout outs and yarn featured in an episode of Dyepot Weekly. Of course, my Etsy shop is filled with yarn that has been dyed in my videos, and I do include the video titles and approximate publication date in all of my Etsy listings, so you can go watch exactly how I dyed it, or put that on for some slow TV as you are knitting or crocheting. But one of the big things right now is the 2022 ChemKnits Hanukkah Yarn Sampler. One of the most frequent questions I get on all my videos is, I wonder how this might knit up. And with the Hanukkah Sampler, you can have 8 different types of colorways that you can swatch and play with to see how they work up. Because every night of Hanukkah, there will be a new yarn dyeing video, and the Hanukkah samplers that I have in my Etsy shop feature a wrapped mini skein for each night that you can unwrap while watching the video. And there's a lot of different types of colorways that you can play with. If you would like to learn more, I will have links to the Hanukkah sampler and everything else down in the video description. But now let's go wash our yarn. We have yarn to wash, but furthermore, we have a blank to unwrap. And so let's go ahead and take these bands off. We will wash those as well. Hopefully there is no problem with the heat. Ooh, look at it. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Let's see. Whoa, that looks so cool. Oh man, I can't wait to look at it all out. Look at those lines. This looks so perfect, so tie-dyed. Maybe we don't have any spiraling, but that's okay. We've got some beautiful like fold marks in here. We'll look at the whole thing all spread out in a little while. Oh, those are the rubber bands. I was like, what is in there? But I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of soap. Hopefully we have no color bleeding, but so far, so good. I'm also gonna go ahead and add our yarn mop, and let's see. No bleeding so far. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of some soap. I think there was already a tiny bit of soap in the water, but I'm gonna carefully rinse out everything. And then I'm gonna put all of the yarn and the blank into the spin dryer so that way we can hang it up to dry. And then we'll come back and look at the finished blank before I unravel it, because I will be unraveling it for Lindsay Lou. But anyway, I'm really happy that there's no bleeding, because sometimes with these primary colors, that can happen. We did not have a massive reveal because I was washing the blank, but now you can see our tie-dye. And imagine if this fabric were whiter. Because here, it doesn't look like much of a spiral, but you can see the curve here. You can see that the way that the colors are spreading out. And oh my goodness, I really, really wish that we could have seen this with something whiter. And this is making me want to tie-dye a t-shirt with rainbow colors again. I mean, just look the way these colors are just blending together. And they did so well, especially considering we mixed all of these ourselves. You do see some breaking around the purple specifically. You can see this little halo with blue. That's because the pinks are striking a little bit faster than the blues. But overall, the colors really stayed where we put them. And we have a wonderful amount of white here. Let's flip this over. Take a look at the wrong side, because even though this is the wrong side, we did technically add dye here as well. We added dye both to the top and the bottom of the blank. So this actually mirrors the front side more than sometimes blanks do, just because I don't always flip them and add stuff to the other side. But I'm so happy with the different colors I mixed. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think if I would do anything differently. I don't know. Maybe I would make the yellow a hair more intense. Maybe also the green. The green is, I think, a little bit less saturated than the blue and the purple, pink, and orange. So both of those could have used a little bit more pigment. But for not measuring, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at all. Now, the fun thing here with this random color progression is, again, that this is a double-stranded sock blank. So when we go to unravel it, everywhere the colors transition, it'll happen on both strands. So wherever you have a random, I don't know, more random patch of white, that'll be mirrored, which is great for making something symmetrical, if that's what you want to do, or what. Now, looking at this blank, I can visualize that we're going to have, you know, variegated green, yellow, and orange that goes into yellow and orange. And as we go down, we're going to add more pink and more purple. Because these stripes go a little bit diagonal, we will slowly introduce other colors, giving this a variegated gradient, semi-self-striping kind of feel. But you know that this green section is going to have more green than that one. And so this is one of those reasons why having that matched pair of yarn can be really, really handy. Now, in contrast with our blank, our yarn mop has a lot less pigment. The colors are a little bit softer. They aren't nearly as vibrant where they are present. And the colors here are more random, but we're more likely, it's not gonna happen every round, but we're more likely in one round to see all of the rainbow colors plus white than we are here. Maybe there'll be a row towards the center where we have all of the colors in progression, but otherwise the colors are much more blocked with where they are here. And so if we had tie-dyed the skein, we would have had bolder, more repeating color, but it would have been different from having that pre-knit fabric. But anyway, I am gonna go unravel the sock blank now for Lindsay. And I'm gonna do that by hand today on this PVC pipe knitting knotty. I will, as I wind, sort of separate the strands, and so one skein will go on one side, one on the other, and then the lengths of the skeins will be reasonable. This will allow us to see the progression a little bit more than if I used my skein winder to unravel it. I don't always unravel skeins in the video because I think that you can, when you look at a sock blank, you can get a better feel of what the color progressions might be as you work it up when you see the blank versus when you see the yarn in a skein. But our lab partner wanted it unraveled, so therefore I'm going to unravel it today. But the other reason why I often don't unravel blanks in my videos is that they're a work of art, and so part of the fun of having a blank like this is seeing it. If you like to unravel them yourselves. No shade, Lindsay, but it's why, like, if I'm going to list it in the shop, I always give the option to unravel the blanks that I have, but I let the customer decide if they want to do it themselves or if they want me to do it. But go and check out the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. I don't know if there's any sock blanks there right now, but I do have some mini skein sets probably, at least, and so it's worth going and checking out no matter what. As you unravel the blank, you can see how well these variegated portions are matched. And you also see the crimp that is in the yarn. And so this is why I will relax the twist of the yarn by just soaking it in some water and hanging it up to dry at the end of the video, off camera. And here is the blank unraveled. Looking at the progression from one end to the other, you can see how there would be some striping qualities to the way the yarn works up. The thing that's a little bit harder to see now that it's unraveled is that these stripes are going to be variegated. I mean, in some places it looks like the strands could just be overlapping, when in reality we've got green and blue and white in some of those stripes. But I would love to hear from you down in the comments. Do you prefer to see listings of sock blanks as they are unraveled, or do you like to see them as they were dyed? In general, I like to see all yarn as it was dyed, and this is a reason why I always provide a flat lay of the yarn that I dye in the shop, so you can see, oh, okay, this is a repeating colorway, or this is a more random colorway, and things like that. One thing I think you can tell for sure now that maybe is a little harder when a blank is in the blank form is that we have a lot more pigment in the blank than we do in our yarn mop, which you could kind of tell, but sometimes there's a lot of resist in the stitches that gives mottling, and so the colors end up being less vibrant from the blank because there's that more pastel that's introduced that then you see when you re-knit it up. So anyway, here is our yarn. Lindsay Lou, thank you so much for being my lab partner for today's episode of Dyepot Weekly. I really hope that you enjoyed the video and your yarn. But man, now I kind of have that OK Go, the 3 primary colors song stuck in my head. I think it's a song they did for Sesame Street many years ago. Anyone else? Can anyone else immediately sing it? I'm not going to sing it. You don't need to hear my singing voice, but that's all I can think about right now. And now as I get ready to sign off, you want to make sure that you are subscribed and that you stay tuned because Black Friday is coming up, and in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop, I like to have a big sale and some special deals that involve usually some kind of mystery surprise skeins at a really, really good price. And so subscribe because I'll talk about that more in Friday's video. And subscribing is the biggest way you can support the content here. I love it when you buy yarn, when you become channel members, join Patreon, all of those things. But the biggest thing that you can do that helps this channel continue to grow is by engaging with the videos. Watching, liking, commenting, those things all help so much. So thank you all so much for all of your support. And thank you so much for watching.